Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Thursday. Um, what a beautiful day it's been, actually. Weather is beautiful and warm here, and life is good. We have Dr. Dennis Carroll on the show with us tonight, and we are talking about this incredible topic, the Vrill. Um, I know over the years a lot of people have been asking about it, and there's a lot of speculation about it. Where is it? What that? And I myself, over the years, actually have done a bit of research on it, but I found it a little bit uh, not. There's not that much information. But of course, Dr. Dennis Carroll, masterful researcher, of course, knows about all of these things. And I want to just say to welcome everybody in the chat, Lisa D. So good to have you back. All my wenches with wrenches, thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Wonderful to have you here. And here we have, ta-da, Dr. Dennis Carroll.
This afternoon where I'm at. This evening where you hello,
right, wonderful, Dennis. It's so good to see you again. How are things? Are you still freezing there? Goeie aand, Duke. Goeie aand. Yeah. We speak it Afrikaans. Sorry, are you guys cold there? What's the weather like? I know you must be freezing from what I'm hearing.
I've been outside. That's why I still got my jacket on. Actually, we've still got snow on the ground out there, and it's like I think we just got above freezing a few minutes ago. So wow. It's pretty chilly outside right now, definitely. And I have a bunch of cats. Somehow or another, I got adopted by a family of cats, and I had to go out and feed them a little while ago, and they all line up for it. It sounded like a soup kitchen on my front porch.
Well, Dennis, you know what they say about cats. In fact, talking about cats, and I wanted to read it, but I don't have it available now, and I don't want to scratch around. But one of my Facebook friends, actually a South African guy that's living in Thailand, and he's had all sorts of and he might even well be watching. So I'm not going to mention your name, but he has had lots of paranormal out-of-body experiences. And he recently got a cat, and he explained how the cat has helped him ground, and since then he's had 100% no paranormal experiences, etc. The cat is there, and she brings him back into his body. It's amazing. So cats are really special creatures. I know mine certainly are. So if they've adopted you, you deserve them. You deserve them, Dennis. So all wonderful things come to those who deserve them. And I say that to everyone in the chat as well. We have wonderful Dr. Dennis Carroll here tonight, who's going to be really, Dennis, you and I were just talking off air a little bit. And I mean, Dennis just started off by saying, this is going to be a show of note. And I went, absolutely. So Dennis, I'm not going to yap on anymore because it's over to you now, because I'd love to hear what you have to say on the Vrill.
Well, I'm going to say something about the Vrill Society and all this other stuff. Many years ago when I first started doing research on this, and this is a fascinating study, absolutely, I went down this rabbit hole and found out that there were like 1,000 of the little rabbit holes at the bottom of this rabbit hole. And that's what we're going to try to hit a few of them today. But this stuff is very wide ranging and goes, and like we talked about earlier, we may have to do a part 2 on this. It is a fascinating, it even is connected to the Rosicrucians. I know you've heard of them. They're one of the oldest secret societies in the world.
Yes.
This goes deep into the roots of Atlantis. It goes into the ice wall of the Antarctica. It goes off-world. It goes to alien contact. It goes to the Nazis. It goes on and on of the secret spaceships of the Nazis. I often say when I look at the Vrill, I say, now where should I begin? Because it has got so many different little rabbit holes attached with it. But this is definitely one of the most wildest. So everybody buckle up, because this is going to be one of the wildest shows you have ever seen. But today,
buckle up the caps, put on your safety belt. Wow. Let's go. We're on a spaceship with Dr. Dennis.
Yeah. Well, I want to start today with a little explanation of what the Vrill Society, the Vrill, is. Now, back in the year 1871, that's how far back this goes, folks. Maybe even further back than that. But in 1871, there was a book written by a Englishman named Lytton. I think he would pronounce it Lytten. And it was called Vrill, The Coming Race. I actually have a copy of this, a PDF copy. If anybody out there wants it, just contact me. With my email, I'll send you a copy. It's a fascinating read. It's kind of hard to find this book, but it's not ultra rare, but it's kind of hard to find. So if you want a copy, I've got it. But anyway, this book was the basis and formed the foundation for a lot of occult societies that followed afterwards. That's the interesting part. It even goes into the Nazi regime of Germany back in World War II, or right before World War II actually started. The occult societies were beginning to flourish. They flourished, first of all, in the UK, the United Kingdom. Then they went to America, and they started flourishing here in America. Then they went back to Germany and really began taking off in Germany at that time. Now, I'm going to explain what the Vrill are and what that all it comes down to, so that everybody will know what we're talking about today. The Vrill, the word Vrill, V-R-I-L, actually supposedly stands for a secret underground civilization. They were called the Vrilya, V-R-I-L-Y-A, Vrilya. But the power that they harnessed, supposedly it was a telepathic telekinesis type of a power, was called Vrill. And they all supposedly had this psychic power, or could manipulate it for what they want, even to heal, or to supposedly read other people's minds, or even to raise the dead with this power. And what is this power? It's supposed to be the supreme occultic power of the world, or the universe. And it's supposed to be very much like what we would call magic to that extent. But even to this day, the remnants of the Vrill are being sought after by nuclear physicists. It's called the God particle. And the God particle, theoretically, is something that would hold everything, the mass of everything together, binds everything in the universe. And a very perfect example of that would be the Force talked about in Star Wars. That would be what, if you could tap into that, Shanty, if you could tap into this power, you could do anything with your mind. Your mind would be so far outreaching, so powerful, you would have godlike powers and abilities. That blows your mind when you think about that. If there is that kind of power out there, and that we could have it, we could ascend to the part of almost being like gods. So were the Vrill. The Vrilya were very much like that. They were like gods on earth. And they are supposedly the descendants of people who left Atlantis. The remnants, the remainder of those people. You know, Atlantis supposedly, if we look back on the story of Atlantis, Atlantis supposedly, exploded, blew up, and sank beneath the waves. But some of the people supposedly escaped Atlantis alive. These people were almost like gods. They had that power. Now, in the center of Atlantis, when you see some of the old drawings and stuff of Atlantis, and Plato talked about it, that in the very center of Atlantis was like a pyramid structure. Or it was sort of like, not like the pyramids of Egypt, but it was sort of what we call a step pyramid type thing. And at the very top of this thing, there was like a transmitter-like device. And what this would do was harness the Vrill, and send it to every inhabitant in this city or in this country or whatever. I call it more like an island kingdom type thing. It would send the power to everybody in there. So it was sort of like if you're familiar with ham radios, you got to have repeating towers for radios all over the world. That's the way it goes. Matter of fact, when I used to work at the local hospital we had here, all of the police departments had their repeating antennas on top of the hospital because that was the highest building around. So you got to have repeat. This was very much like that. It would direct this power to other people, and so they could all tap into it, just like you would plug in something in your kitchen today. You'll plug into the power of electricity. Yeah.
Wow. But was this a bad thing? Because if you think about it, I mean, even if you go back to Tartarian times and pre-mud flood times, you know, energies and things were being freely harnessed, right? But just from the planet, not necessarily nefariously, you know, as a just free for humans, I guess, right? So do you think that this particular Vrill that we're talking about, because I know it's like a force of energy, right? And it can be used for good or evil. So, I mean, they say, as you said, you know, you can heal with it, or you can blow up cities with it, right? So I guess it can be going either way. But I guess it's always about the intention, isn't it?
Well, it was very much like any kind of tool, Chanty. I mean, you know, it's like a hammer. You can build a house with a hammer, or you can commit murder with one. A lot of people have done that. That's just the way it goes with any kind of a tool. It can be used for good, or it can be used for bad purposes. But when this guy supposedly ran into this underground kingdom of the Vrill, he supposedly met them as sort of being very moralistic people. They respected the power that they had and did not abuse it that much. They were very particular about it. And that's why they wanted to get rid of him, because he was like a human, you know, like us. He had a lot of fallacies they didn't have. And so they didn't like him. Some of them wanted to do away with this guy because he was, you know, from the kingdom above. Here's the interesting thing, and I've talked about this before on other different shows. I think a lot of the secrets of our world, and you talked about this the other day with our good friend Jessica Jones, when we were talking about the colonization of different planets. I think a lot of the secrets of our world lie underneath our feet. There's a whole nother existence below us in the underground. Exactly. And if you think about it, Chanty, the perfect place to hide, if you were going to, you know, flourish and away from other people and away from their influence of these civilizations, the perfect place to go would be underground. And here's another benefit of it. I think the longer you stay underground, the longer you would live. The less you would be affected by the radiation. You know, we are all living in radiation right now on the surface of this planet. And if you go to Mars, by the way, you know, you don't hear him talk about this. Elon Musk doesn't say a whole lot about this. But you would not live long on Mars unless you were shielded from the radiation on that planet, because it doesn't have that much of an atmosphere, okay? The atmosphere of our planet is very much like our mother's womb was. It protected us when we were born. It still protects us for the rest of our life. But the protection of it slowly wears off, though. You know, as you get older, gravity pulls on you. The radiation begins to affect you more. Why? Because you start getting wrinkles, you get older, okay? You start aging more rapidly. I believe if you lived underground from the beginning of your birth until death, you would live probably longer out of this radiation. You know what I'm saying? And
exactly.
If you look at being an underground civilization or something, that's a perfect place to do it. You know, if you were going to pick out the perfect place, that's it. Unless you were going off world, which is another story. But anyway, the Vrill distanced themselves from humanity. They said, "Oh, they're not very moralistic people. They're wild people. They're very uncivilized. We're going underground. We're going to get away from them." And supposedly the Vrill flourished in this underground kingdom. And when this guy supposedly he was doing some caving stuff, and he stumbled upon their civilization. Like I say, you need to read this book. It is fascinating. But anyway, when the occult societies heard about this, they said, "Oh, wait a minute. This is the power we've all been looking for. This is the one thing that we've been trying to tag all along. We just didn't know it." You know, we didn't realize what was going on. This sort of opened their eyes, gave them an awakening to this, and they said, "Hey, we need to start pursuing this." And because it not only enhances the human spirit, it supposedly enhances the human mind and our very psychic abilities that we have inherent in us. They said this is the perfect vehicle we've been looking for.
Exactly. At what point, because I also through the research I've done on this, and I do believe this might have been around about the 1800s when Hitler and the boys discovered the Vrill, right, and the potential of it. But then it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dennis, and I might be wrong, but it was then they discovered that the Vrill of a child is that much more potent and when it's concentrated, potent and concentrated than that of an adult, and that the child could by using the Vrill of a child, you could because kids are between worlds, right? So they're half in the physical world as well as the supernatural world. So what is your take on that?
As we grow older, Shanti, we begin to realize our limitations, whether they're real or not. Okay. Sometimes we envision our limitations. We limit ourselves. Children are not that way. They're more innocent. They're more open to these things. They don't have those limitations. They haven't discovered their boundaries yet, you might say. And but unfortunately, we the older we get, the more grown up, the more we relate to each other and all that, we start recognizing boundaries. We inhibit our minds and our psychic abilities and everything else that we are inherently born with. We suppress them unknowingly and many times. Some people, like our friend Jessica, who could do remote viewing, and other people who have different talents for these things, are people who are sort of, different than that. They have, not recognized their boundaries or limitations on that. And here's another interesting thing. When you get into the spiritual aspects of this, and there is a big difference between the spiritual and the psychic thing going on here, okay? The spiritual aspects of this are told very much in the Bible, especially by Jesus Christ, who talked a lot about faith. Faith that moves mountains, that can heal people, that can do things. What are you talking about here? You're talking about, I think, the inherent abilities that we were all given by our Creator in order to do things. But we put boundaries on them. We put limitations on ourselves when we shouldn't do that, but we do. And that's what makes us grown-ups, unfortunately. Different from the children. And even animals exhibit this thing. Look at dogs and cats that we were talking about earlier. Cats are supposed to be very spiritual type animals. Dogs are sort of more of our guardians in the physical world, whereas cats are more like they walk between worlds. They're more like the spiritual guardians in that respect. Cats, I think, are fascinating. They're very mysterious animals, but I think they have a very spiritual side to them in one way too, that other things don't have. So we got to understand there's a big difference between the spiritual and the psychic abilities that are inherited. These are like talents or gifts that are given to us. Now, back in time, the Nazi Germany was out looking for these people with talents like that, and like I've talked about before in my own experience, I was contacted and they tried to recruit me for the CIA for something like that because I happen to know a little bit about demonology and stuff like that. And the interesting thing the guy told me about that said, we're looking for people with supernatural talents.
Right.
And that's what they're looking for because they can use those. Those are inherent talents that all human beings have, but some of us are just better in touch with our talents than other people are.
That's exactly it. And I mean, also through the conversations I've had over the years with the survivors, especially the what they call the hierarchy kids, the bloodline kids, they're all tested for bloodlines and spiritual gifts. So if they've got the spiritual gifts, then they are taken in and obviously weaponized. It's not even anything other than weaponizing, because that is really what they do to the children, is they weaponize those gifts, which is very sad, actually. But anyway, so what do you think about, often the Vrill, and how is this? And I don't know if I'm jumping gun. If I am, please say so. But how is often the Vrill is connected to the Black Eye Club? How is that connected? Is it connected? I mean, we know the Black Eye Club, we see these, I don't know if any of the viewers, I'm sure none of the viewers here need any introduction to that, but just in case there are, you often see these celebrities and famous people walking around as though they've just been punched in the eye. And there's so many of them, so one wonders what that is. Is there any connection to that, Dennis?
Well, absolutely. I think there are certain factors in this world that the bad guys are using to accomplish their goals. Just like, as a matter of fact, I did a thing last night on my show, Hunting the Shadows. I talked about angels and demons, how you can spot them and how you know what you're dealing with. And there are a lot more good guys out there than there are the bad guys, but the bad guys are at work too. And we got to understand that, and we got to be very careful and watch for that. And know that things like this Black Eye Club you're talking about, the black goo is actually supposedly sort of like a slug-like thing that they can put in underneath your eyelid, and it goes down and supposedly through your eye channel into your brain. And supposedly this is a way they can take over and manipulate you. It's very much like, if you want to look at it that way, like demonic possession.
Right.
To a certain extent, using something like that. And these things could be described as demons or demonic particles or whatever name you want to give them. That's fascinating stuff when you think about it. But yes, the bad guys have harnessed this kind of stuff, and they're using it for their own purposes and intents. Here's one thing I said about evil, Shanti. We got to always remember, evil is very predictable. If you study it and understand where it comes from and how it operates, that's the one good thing about evil. I say that, and people say, what are you talking about? The one good thing about evil. But there is one good thing about evil, and is that it is very predictable.
Yes.
And it is very deceivable. It comes out, it may come at you looking like it's good, but it's not. Now, good, the real good in this universe, doesn't have to disguise itself. It doesn't deal with secrets and hidden codes and trying to keep the truth from you. But evil does, and evil wants to subvert the truth and keep you from learning the real things in this universe. Now, evil will come up and tell you, say, oh, you know what? We're really the good guys. God was the bad guy. He was trying to keep us knowledge from you. But we're the good guys. We're giving you that knowledge. But they don't tell you the second part of that. The knowledge they're giving you is the knowledge to destroy yourself with.
Exactly.
That's the way they operate. So that's the way evil is. It can be so very deceivable in that possession. You have to be very wary of it. You don't have to worry about the good guys. They're not going to bother you. They're not going to hurt you. But the bad guys, that's a whole different story altogether. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's amazing how, when we're looking at this whole Vrill society, from what I've seen, it forms a template, right? Because I know what I was reading as well. When the Nazis were trying to harness this energy, interestingly enough, also what I came across was that none of the other secret societies or clubs, whatever they were called, were allowing women in. And the Vrill actually allowed women in. And in fact, what I was hearing was that there was more women than men at one point. And in fact, there was a time where two of the leaders, there were two strong female leaders, and I believe one of them was actually unalived. So what's your take on that? Because I think it was important. They must have discovered a secret somewhere there, because everything in life, in order to achieve what you, the desire, right? The desire, there has to be the balance. And the male and the female balance each other in different ways. So I'm interested to know if they discovered that, and if that was why they allowed the female women into the Vrill.
Well, I think the problem lies in the fact the big differences between male and females is just the way they approach things. Men can be very decisive and say, "Oh, I'm very opinionated about something." They say it's this way or that way, and that's it. They can't see any difference in. But women, on the other hand, and I have to hand it to the women for this, are very open to a certain extent to certain things, more so than men. And I think that's why women are, the forefront of this kind of stuff, of the movements and everything that go with this, because they're more open to the things that they need to be open to than the men are. Okay. Most men, and being a man myself, I know this, are very opinionated. Okay. And where women are a little more open to things. I've known a lot of opinionated women too. That goes along with that too. But, I think they're more open to understanding ideas, and I think they're more in touch with their intuition that they have, more so than men are. I've had over the years in my career, I've had a lot of women come to me and say, I'm having this problem, I'm having that problem, and these things are going on. And I say, well, look, you know what your problem is? The main basis of your problem is you are very, receptive to this. You're very open to it. And they'll say, well, how can I stop that? How can I do that? I said, well, you can't, because that's the way you're made. You're made that way. Exactly. So you got to learn to deal with it, and you got to learn how to harness it and then live with it and do the things you need to do it, because it's part of you, exactly. And they got to understand that that's why they're so very receptive to these things. That it is a part of their being. They were made that way. That's being part of female, and I think that's why they are found to be the leaders in the forefront of types of movements like this, because they are very open to these ideas. Now, when you go back to the Vrill society itself, now we're going to turn away from the Vrill for a few minutes and go to the Vrill society. What I touched on earlier about all these occult societies going after us, hey, this is what we've been looking for, This is the thing that we need. There was one that formed in Germany at that time, and that was called the Vrill Society. And here's the interesting part of all this. We know without a doubt that the Nazis were very, very, very interested in all occultic type things. They were out looking for occult objects, like the Spear of Destiny and the True Cross and so on and so on. All these, because it wasn't a religious respect that they were showing here. They wanted what was the number one thing that they were out for? Power. Power is still the most addictive thing, Chantelle, on this planet, is power. It can be worse than any drug or anything else. And we know, we've seen that. We've talked about that before with a lot of these people, that are celebrities and everything. They want that power. And they will do anything, even to the point where they sign their souls away for that power. And it drives them. And you know what? If you and I were tomorrow to become billionaires like Elon Musk, we would not be the same people, you and me, Chantelle. We would not be the same people that we once were. Although we might fight against it changing us, it still changes us, no matter what,
Exactly.
And when these things come across and change us for that, sometimes, most of the time, unfortunately, they change us for the worse and not the better. That's just the way that goes. But if you have absolute power, it's like that very old saying, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. And that's what the Nazis were after. Any kind of power that they could find. Hitler was power mad. He was thirsty for it. And he sent his people out looking for this stuff. And so somebody in the Nazi party says, hey, have you heard about the Vrill Society? They're tapping into the God power that's out there. Okay, they're tapping into this. We need to talk to these guys. So supposedly the Nazis contacted the Vrill Society, which were a lot of the women in Germany at that time, and they were very beautiful, outgoing, socialite type women. These were not wallflowers. Okay, these women, they were the movers and shakers. They knew what they were doing here. So the Nazis definitely approached them and said, "Hey, we want to get in on this power that you're talking about here." And so that's where a lot of this began, supposedly. And here's what the Vrill Society, the main goal of them, this is what they thought, that the Vrillia that they talk about in the book now, okay, we talked about that earlier, the Vrillia really did exist. And they were not only the remnants of Atlantis, but the remnants of aliens from other worlds, okay?
Yes.
That's where they brought all this power from with them. And we might even call them fallen angels to a certain extent in that way. These were where they came from. They came from off world, supposedly. That was their true origin. When I investigate and research things, I like to go back to the beginning and find out what the so-called true origins of things are. That tells you the whole story of something, the whole history of it. It gives you the foundation to work upon. So they said that's where the origin of the Vrillia supposedly came from, off world, okay? And that they were like the remnants of aliens. And so the Nazis, when they heard this, they said, "Hey, this is the number one thing we've been looking for, too. This is something we could really do something with. We could really weaponize this because it's white power." That's what they wanted. And that's where supposedly Werner von Braun and some of these other people hooked up with some of these women in the Vrill Society, and they started working together on these projects. And supposedly this is where they developed the Nazi flying saucer, or the flying bell, as it's called. They supposedly developed a lot of technologies from this because, now listen to this, it's going to blow your mind. The Vrill Society women said, "Hey, we're tapped in to this alien consciousness. We'll give you the plans for this stuff. We'll tell you how to make the technology you need." But what the Vrill Society didn't understand, they were not really tapped in, supposedly, to an alien consciousness. They may have been tapped into the demonic.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Well, I mean, if you think about sorry, Dennis.
It is thought that down through the years, the demonic, the fallen angels, have been giving mankind the technology that they brought from heaven with them, or from the heavens. They may have been from other worlds, not only just from supposedly heaven, but from other worlds as well. These fallen angels have given us their dark science, their alchemy, their magical type stuff, have given us this technology over the years, a little bit at a time. They're not going to give you they're not going to share their power with you. They're only giving you this stuff so that you will be enabled to destroy yourself.
Exactly. It's like too much too soon, right? And because I think, our consciousness being what it is, it's too much to be able to use that stuff in the way that I think it's truly designed. I'm interested when you talk about the fallen angels. So obviously they would have harnessed this role already, if they were already using it before. But do you think it was given to them as their natural gifts from God when they were still in the angelic realm, or do you think they stole it? Interesting point there. I mean, I think about that.
Well, basically, when they probably were thrown out of heaven or thrown out of the grace of God, however way you want to term that, they took their technology with them. Okay, but now it's turned to be used for good, for bad and for evil purposes, and not good anymore. I call it celestial mechanics. I believe without a doubt these things have, because if you go back to certain descriptions in the Bible and older books and texts, they talk about this angelic realm as being very much like, a science fiction type thing. That they had the wheels inside of wheels with a lot of eyes and stuff to it. This is very alien looking type of a technology that we're talking about here. But here's the interesting thing we got to understand about the pursuit of the God particle as opposed to God. Okay. There's two different things going on here. Okay. God your creator still has the ability to have a personal relationship with you. But the God particle is not like a consciousness. It's not like a God consciousness. It is sort of like a force that's there.
Of course.
It is a
Wow.
power that can, like you said
Wow.
earlier, it can be used for good or bad.
Yes.
You
So
tap
it's more
into
like,
it.
yeah.
Einstein talked about this. Einstein talked about it. Tesla talked about it. Tesla said if you want to think in terms of the universe, you must think in terms of frequency, vibration, and all that stuff.
sound.
You remember that? Okay.
Mhm.
Einstein said the same thing. Einstein says there's what? A unified field theory that binds everything together. If you can tap into
Yes.
that, you would have unlimited power. And that's why they're looking for the God particle, Shanti. It would give you unlimited power. Now, we're not talking about being like God. God is a different thing, completely different from the God particle. God's particle is what God used to create everything with and give it mass and reality. Put it that way, okay? And when you tap into this, you are doing stuff that's almost like magic. What we would call magic, you know, that we've heard about so many years and so many stories down through our cultures that the you know, magic, dark magic and good magic and all this other stuff. Because whatever your intention is, and we've talked about this, I've talked about this with Jessica. If you go out in the woods after cryptids or you're looking for things, these things I think know without a doubt what your true intentions are.
Exactly.
Okay.
They
But
do.
the God particle is different. It doesn't matter what your intentions are, good or bad, you can still use it. You can still tap into it because it is a prevalent force of the universe itself. But I don't think our creator would like for us to tap into it the wrong way. Absolutely.
Exactly. It's like, wow, that makes so much sense. You know, the God particle and God, because now why would it, you know, but there again, I'm trying to like wrap my head around this, but I don't think like a Luciferian. So I can't imagine why I would want to take something like that and twist and turn it and manipulate it into, because that's ultimately what it is, right? It's the energy that is, it's a force of energy that you are manipulating in to work, to use one way or the other. So why not just tap into God? Why not just align with God completely? You know, to me, that's the weirdest thing. Why would you want that? But I guess each person is doing what they need to do, right?
That's where the Luciferians will tell you very quickly, oh, we're the good guys. Lucifer was the good guy because he wanted to give you knowledge. God was the bad guy because he didn't want you to have that knowledge. But let's go. We got to examine this statement very closely because it's very false in this concept. This is a big lie that's out there. Okay, a very big lie, because your creator knew that if you had that knowledge, you would what? End up doing what? Destroying yourself with it. He knew what we were capable of. He knew what we could do. Let me put it to you this way. If you had a 5-year-old in your house, would you give them a loaded revolver?
No, of
No,
course not.
you wouldn't do that. Something bad's going to happen. Okay. That's the same thing with the knowledge that God had. He said, hey, if I give them too much knowledge on this, they're going to kill it. And look what we have done with some of that knowledge. I think a lot of that knowledge that was given to us by the fallen angels were given to us for the simple reason that we would end up destroying ourselves with it. Do you think, and I've asked people at lectures about this before, do you think God is the one that came up with the atomic bomb? No. God does not need atomic bombs, by the way. Okay. He doesn't need it.
Exactly.
Why would he do it? He didn't give us the atomic bomb. So who gave us the atomic bomb? Okay. Why were we allowed to have that? It wasn't probably the good guys. Nope.
Of course not. I mean, anything that is anything that is there to destroy life, destroy is not. I mean, you have God is the creator. The devil, so to speak, is the destroyer. So every action in line with, it's either a creative process, and that's another thing, because the Vrill use a lot. There's a lot of connections to sex magic with the Grill. With the Grill, listen to me, the Vrill, right? There was a lot of, also with the Nazis, they were doing a lot of orgies and things, trying to harness that Vrill energy. But from what I was reading, it wasn't that successful. But then we also understand, right, that it's not, and that was more an excuse for them to have like all sorts of orgies, right? But then we also understand that when we look at sex magic, for example, it's not just about in that moment when you're having an orgy. There's something like this tantric sex, right? And it was very interesting because I remember a few years ago, Sting from the Police, you know, the band The Police, and he was very popular at the time. And him and his wife were promoting tantric sex in a major way. And hey, I'm all for everyone having a good time with their significant other, make no mistake. But I found it interesting, and really none of anyone's business what what that's about. And as I've gone along, and why they were promoting it so much, and as I've gone along and learned more about how sex magic works, I understand that tantric sex is what they would use, because the orgasm with tantric sex can last for days, and then they would use that to power their magic, right? I mean, that's also part of this. And maybe that's also how they've then evolved and learned to use it more, rather than in orgies or in more like an hour or a minute or whatever. They would rather use something that is more of the force of the energy, right? That uses it, that can last for days, weeks, whatever. What's your take on that?
You gotta think about it too. The sex, the natural act of sex, is a release of energy.
Right.
And Aleister Crowley was fascinated by this, by the way, and so was Jack Parsons, who was one of the rocket scientists that took us to the moon, by the way, who was also a disciple of Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was deep into sex magic. He was what he called the Babylon working. But there is a release of energy, but also we got to remember it's a heightened emotional response. Okay. So therefore you're opening the psychic up, so to speak,
Right.
with this stuff. Okay, so that's what they were trying to tap into. And that's what happened with the Vrill Society. When the Nazis came to them and said, hey, you're trying to tap into this power that we want. This is what we've been looking for. This might even drive our ships that we want to develop, our V2 rockets and all this other stuff. This is what we've been looking for. And that's why they hooked up with the Vrill Society. And the Vrill Society said, look, this is an alien consciousness. We can all hook up to it. We'll give you the secrets that they have. We'll go in with you on this. And supposedly this goes even far more ranging than just ships and other stuff. This goes into occult power that they were looking for. Hitler was very interested in that. So was Goebbels and some of his other top men, Himmler and all the rest of them. They were devil worshippers. I mean, if you go to some of these castles in Germany to this day and go down in the basements of some of these places where the Nazis hang out, they're wearing like pentagrams on the floor. There are different ways that they went. They were deep into this darkness, okay? And listen, there are even rumors that there was one whole supposedly branch of the Nazi military that was called the Wehrmacht. They were called werewolves. They supposedly called themselves werewolves, but according to legend, they were able to turn into werewolves using this occult power. And, I've talked about this before. There are such things as werewolves. It is a part of a ladder climb that you do in dark witchcraft to obtain this power. This is a cultic power that you can get. And I know without a doubt that the Nazis were very interested in shape-shifting power, because that is a very big occultic power that you can get.
Right.
That doesn't surprise me that they had a battalion called the Wehrmacht, the werewolves, okay? That doesn't surprise me a bit. But that's what they were looking for. This power was what they wanted, just like Aleister Crowley. He was seeking tap into that.
Now that brings me to the question of the swastika, right? The Nazi. Sorry, let me just switch my phone off on silent here. Sorry, guys, it's bleeping. Yeah, I forgot to switch it on silent. The swastika, because Hitler read a book or something by some woman, and I can't remember her name, who wrote this book combining Asian and occult wisdom together. And that would be the first time, and I can't remember her name now. Got to find it here. I did write it down, but I don't. I'll find it just now. And he then was using, but from what I understand, this book, it was channeled to her by the Vrill, the secret society, because she had been going to Tibet. So she was on a mission to Tibet, and then she also achieved this sacred knowledge, and then she wrote a book with sacred teachings and sacred scriptures. So that was for the good, though, right? And then what happened was Hitler and friends got hold of it, and then they also went on a mission to Tibet, right, to try and find the Vrill, with the masters living in the Himalayas. And then apparently a couple of years later, then they discovered, as you're saying, these secrets. They were even taking the measurements of the Asian people's skulls there, because they thought they were the direct descendants of the Aryan race. So this was all part and parcel of them obviously discovering the superior Aryan race. But then what they did, because then she was talking about the symbol, the swastika, which was not called the swastika then. It was the symbol of goodwill. It was complete peace, joy, goodwill, etc. And also the Norse symbol.
The Hindu symbol, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And also the Norse symbol that was of Odin. No, not Odin, Thor. Thor, I think it was a symbol. They use it as a symbol of Thor as well. But then what the Nazis did is they took that symbol and because the leg is actually, I think, hang on, the original one, the leg, when you turn that symbol, the leg is pointing to the right. Mm-hmm. The original symbol, the leg, and I wish I'd taken the pictures, but the leg is pointing to the right, which means you're on the right path.
Oh,
what they did was they turned it to the left. Yes, they swastika to the left.
It basically stands for order in the universe. That's what it means. That's what its true meaning stands for, the order of the universe itself. Okay. It also was incorporated. Are you familiar with the wolf angel?
No.
The wolf angel, or some people call it the wolf angel, was actually a trap that was used to capture wolves. But it has a symbol very much like that. It's still used by a lot of the modern day Nazi party. The wolf angel is sort of just half of a swastika kind of looking thing. Okay. But that's another symbol that was very big, in that time period too. But see, that's what ties in what we were saying earlier, Shanti. He was out looking for all this occultic stuff. He was looking to tap into the power of these things.
Exactly.
They got hung up on race. Certain races have got this, certain races don't have this, or whatever. And if they had quit the stuff with the race stuff, we probably might be talking German right now. Okay. If they had not, they put their direction in the wrong way. They put their direction.
Yeah. That was
yeah.
Yes, because they were harnessing the energy for the dark power. That's what they were using it for. So it's very interesting how they've taken, we often talk about it on this channel, how they take things and invert them, things but there again, I look at that because then we're looking at, there's a difference between transmutation and transformation, because then when we're still looking at that, it's still transmuting, right? They would still be transmuting that energy between the good and the bad, the right path and the wrong path, instead of transforming. That's what I see. They're working with these extremes from one way to the other. And then they were harnessing that power in the negative polarity And that really is what they were saying in this book, that this could actually blow up the world. They could really end humanity with this power it has. It's the force. And as you say, like the Star Wars force, right? It is the force that can be reckoned with.
Yeah. And they weren't putting their directive where it needed to go. The direction was off center from what they were trying to find. But, and like we said about with the God particle and all that stuff, it can be used either way. But they were looking, of course, to use it in the wrong ways and not the good ways. But I think that's what threw them off eventually, because you got to remember, there's good vibration, and then there's bad vibration. There's negative vibration, and it negative stuff usually destroys, whereas in the good usually creates. And so they were concentrating on the wrong kind of negativity, the wrong kind of vibrational type stuff here. That's where they were coming from on that, and that's why they were hooked up into the occult and deep into the demonic stuff and all those other things. And not only did it go across to the fact that they were looking for shape-shifting, they were looking to make flying saucers. Supposedly, according to rumors, they even had a secret base on the moon. They had a base in the Antarctic. They had certain bases around in Argentina, which is where Hitler supposedly ended up. My father, who fought in World War II, always believed without a doubt that Hitler did not die in Germany. Okay, and that would not surprise me a bit. I've seen a lot of shows about looking for Hitler. Very interesting. So you got to wonder, why were there so many military installations built in South America? For what reasons, and who built them? Like I say, you got to go back to the origin and try to find out exactly where the beginning of all this started. So they were deep and far-reaching, more so than history tells us. And you got to look at this with a critical eye. Like I said, there's so many different rabbit holes, and they went in so many different directions with this. And like you said, with the Aleister Crowley kind of a thing, they were looking to tap into sexual energy or sex magic. They were looking to tap into actual mind manipulation, genetic manipulation. They were messing around with that. We know how, Dr. Mengele was doing all that stuff. The list goes on and on and on. They weren't going in one direction. They were going in many different directions, but they were all usually bad directions.
Absolutely. They really did very depraved things. And it's so interesting to watch how the Vrill is actually, the way I see it, Dennis, and it's like become part of everything. One of the documentaries I was watching, when one of the guys was commenting, he says this Vrill, these guys that are operating now, basically the Nazis, okay, they don't have to have a swastika on their arm to say they're a Nazi, are actually embodying it now. They've already embodied it. So it's not even a separate thing from them anymore. They actually already have embodied that energy in them, which is why they're doing the evil things that they do. What's your take on that?
Well, absolutely. Hitler, you got to go back and look at Hitler, who was big into astrology, by the way. He was big into a lot of occultic stuff, the hidden knowledge. Yeah. That's what the word occult means. We got to symbolize that. It means hidden knowledge. That's what he was basically into. And like I said, he was coming at it from a power thing. Okay. He wanted a power source, which is where the Vrill fulfilled a lot of that supposedly for them in that respect. But like I said earlier, they said they were tapping into an alien consciousness. They didn't realize it could have been a demonic type thing going on. It was a dark kind of stuff and they didn't really question where it was coming from to that extent. But Hitler didn't care where it came from, as long as he could get a hold of it. And that's where they were coming from with this and going. That was the direction they were going in. But supposedly, to me, the most interesting thing of all this, the Vrill talked about eugenics. You know what eugenics is? That is a certain, suppression of certain races. That's actually where Planned Parenthood began, with eugenics. The woman that founded Planned Parenthood said that only certain races should propagate and not other races should do that. That's what Hitler was all about too. Okay. He was looking at changing the very reality of the world that we exist in. He wanted it to change to his third rank. And he looked upon himself as the new Alexander or the new Napoleon. He was a true, if you want to look at him, a true example of not the, but a Antichrist is what he was. That's what
Totally.
he was. True example was. And by the way, the Pope at that time. Now listen to this. I can't remember the name of the Pope, but the Pope who was alive at that time said that Hitler was a very nice gentleman. So, and you know why he called him that? Because he was supposed to be, quote unquote, a devout Catholic. Okay. Then anyway, that's Hitler. Okay. But anyway, that's what you get with this kind of stuff. He was looking for the power, didn't care where he got it, how he got it. And when you take that kind of an attitude, you are very immoral in your outlook on things, and you're very dark and negative. No wonder dark forces and dark negative forces were drawn to him, and he was drawn to them because they were one and the same.
Exactly. Well, exactly. You know, it's really, as you say, you know, looking again. I mean, symbolism. We understand how symbolism works. It harnesses and just kind of explains what they're saying in the symbol form, and especially with the swastika symbol. You know, the one way it's peace, goodwill, good things, creation, all of that. In the other, it's pure destruction. And of course, you know, this is where our free will and choice sits, right? Is that we get to choose which path we take. And they openly, and I mean, and there was these crazy people in the Nazi party. I mean, they became completely obsessed with everything. I mean, was it Himmler or Goering? One of them was taking his 12-year-old daughter to a death camp, to walk around a death camp to see what happens there. I mean, seriously, I can't imagine a father taking his child there. So the depth of depravity is on another level. You know, it's stuff we don't begin to understand in my mind. I cannot begin to understand that. But I guess, you know, they do. So it's bizarre.
Well, you know, what's very sad about that, Shanty, and I've seen the pictures, the photographs. Of course, this is long before my time. It was my father's time, but I've seen the photographs of all those poor little children lined up in that bunker that he killed, and his own children now, you know, that he poisoned them all. I think there may have been 7 or 8 of them altogether. They were all lined up, covered up, and I mean, that is true, pure evil. How can you not say that? You know, without a doubt, that is absolutely true. And we got to remember something. I've studied a lot of this over the years in my research. Symbolism is very important for this stuff. Okay.
Right.
Symbolism is not only just a secret language. They're not just trying to get a secret message over on you. It also is the image of something. You know, the image of something is very important.
Yes.
You know, your image is your reputation. It precedes
Right.
you. You know, if we see a picture of you, we say, well, there's a picture of Shanny. That's an image of her. Okay, we know who you are. But that also is your symbol, and that is your reputation. That is the very essence of your spiritual being to a certain extent. Your image is everything. That's why the Bible talks about the image of the beast, as the Antichrist, is an important thing. Image is everything. And listen to this very closely. The symbols and signals that they use and all this kind of stuff, like the swastika and all this, had a spiritual reference to them. They had a spiritual side to them. They had a spiritual connection. They have a power to them.
Yes,
just like there is power in words, like the words you and I are speaking today, has a certain power to it. Okay. There is power in words, but there's even also power in symbols.
absolutely.
Like the swastika and all these other things. We got to understand that. It's not just they're doing a secret message thing on us. They're showing you their power. They're using their power. And when you cast spells and witchcraft and all that, what do you have to do? You have to draw signals. You have to draw symbols. They represent the power of the spell that you're doing. That's what all this dark occultic stuff leads into. Absolutely. And look at one of the symbols of Nazism was the Iron Cross. That is a Christian symbol, okay? It was given to,
Right.
it was the, we call it the cross of the knights. It was a knight cross. It was given as a military honor to have that. You know, I have one around here somewhere. It is, what's wrong with that? But yet they turned it into an evil symbol, just like the swastika. That's the way it goes with evil.
What's your take? I know I've actually we've done a couple of talks on the show with Jesse just while we're on that point about the Christian cross, and especially with the Christ hanging on the cross. What's your take on that?
Well, it has a symbolism to it. It shows you that, you know, as a reminder of what, you know, the price was paid and what was done on that cross. And yet you got to also look at the other flip side of the coin. That thing is a hateful thing. That's a sort of like an electric chair would be for us. I've sat in one time. I sat in an electric chair one time. It's not a good feeling. Okay. Anyway, that is a symbol of execution. It was a hated thing. It was a terrible way. That was only the scum of the earth died like that. That's the way they looked at you. Okay. You know, you were just trash to them, taking out their trash. Okay. But we now revere it as a symbol of the perfect sacrifice or the very gift of life that was given for us. So we look at it that way. It's our intention and our look at it on things. We give the power to these symbols.
Right,
that's what's
exactly.
going on here. We give it the power of these symbols. Just like in witchcraft, you give that power of the spell to that symbol or that rune that you cast. You've heard of casting the runes. When they cast the runes, it gives those words, those letters, really they're an alphabet, okay? They become signals. They have power to them.
Of course.
We give them that.
And like a talisman, right? Like any type of talisman, really, at the end of the day, if you have a talisman of something, it holds the power of something that actually serves as some type of battery for you. Michael Jaco, I have to say hello to you. Good grief. Nice to see you here. Saw you a long time ago. Really good to have you. Michael Jaco, I actually interviewed you, I think, right at the beginning of Aquarius Rising Africa. It's time again. Nice to see you. Okay, Dennis, sorry about that. But it's so true about the symbols, right? In terms of the power they harness. And the power we give them, right? The power we actually give them when we actually allow ourselves to place power in something, like a talisman. I mean, there are some talismans, they cannot actually even, people cannot go without some of their talismans. You see a lot of these religions and cultures and things, they will hold on to their talisman. And that's often where their spells and things actually lie, right?
Absolutely. You know, matter of fact, like I wear a medallion of the seven archangels, the star of the seven archangels, which is a good symbol because it has all their names on it. And it's supposed to be a very powerful type thing. But let me just say this, okay? And I've told a lot of people this over the years. You can use crosses and stuff like that in certain ceremonies and all that. I have done that. They are just symbols of something, though. You got to remember they are symbols. You don't put your trust and faith in a object. You put it in the symbol of what it symbolizes.
Exactly.
That's what you're doing. You're using it as sort of what I like to call it as sort of a hook to hang your faith on, kind of. You know, you say, this is what I'm, you know, my goal, my directive. Like we were talking about with the Nazis, their directives were way off on stuff. They were looking for the wrong directives. If you go with the right directives, I don't see anything wrong with that because it's putting that in your mind and helping you to manifest and understand what that is or put it in the forefront of your thoughts. There's nothing wrong with that if you're using it the right way, you know, for good purposes and not bad purposes. Absolutely. But that's where symbolism and all that comes in at. Symbolism is what, and the power that we give it is the power of the mind. and our faith
Exactly.
our faith is in what that is, and it's what it symbolizes and what it means to us. It can be a personal thing, just like when you pull out a photograph of your family, that's very personal to you. You know everybody in that photograph. You understand all that. That symbolizes your family to you, but that's not your family. That's just a photograph. Okay, we got to
Right.
remember that. That's an
Exactly.
object, and objects have no power unless we give it to them to that extent, and that's the power of the mind. And the Nazis
Exactly.
understood this power of the mind, though. That's where the Vrill comes in, the
Exactly.
power of the mind,
Exactly.
manifesting things as you wanted to, and tapping into this
Exactly.
so-called God particle thing going on. If you could have this unlimited power, and I'm thinking about this in a scientific way now, okay? If you could tap into this unlimited power, we don't need batteries anymore. We wouldn't need electricity anymore. That's why Tesla was talking about moving currents of electricity without wires.
Right.
Look at
Exactly.
what we're transmitting right now today. You and I are doing wirelessly with computers right now. There's no wires
Exactly.
involved in it. Tesla would have been amazed by it probably, but he knew what we were doing. He was deep into that kind of stuff. I think Tesla may have even had a handle on the Vrill a little bit here, okay? Because he might have been going in that direction. Because the Vrill was a power without wires or tubes or
Wow.
anything. And that was the perfect,
Wow.
and that's why the Nazis were so interested in that. This is what they were looking for. And I could see them taking something like that and developing flying saucers with it. And what he wanted was, he was this close, Shanty. I mean, close as a piece of paper between a crack, okay, to getting an atomic bomb. Okay, that's how close this guy was. And if he could have got that, he could have held the whole world hostage and said, hey, you leave me alone, let me do what I'm going to do, or I'll blow you up. That's it. And yet we're still dealing with that to this day. There are people in this world today with the fingers on those buttons that could take our world away from us in a heartbeat.
I agree.
We're
I
still
agree.
living under that. That's not good. And, that's why, I've talked about that. That's another show for another time. The Antichrist itself will have that kind of power. He will have that kind of dark power over this world. He'll hold
Yeah.
this world hostage in that fact. But there are men doing that today. That's still going on. Hitler would have really liked those guys, He could have really got a handle on that. And yet it wasn't meant for him to have it, though. We got it. The United States got it, but we did use it the wrong way, unfortunately. But now it's being used to supposedly to harness power and run cities and homes. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, if you use it the right way, and like we said about that hammer at the beginning of the show, you can build a house with it, or you can crack somebody's head over with it. It depends on what you want to do with it.
Cool.
And I think our Creator knows without a doubt what we're capable of. He knows us better than we know ourselves. And why he held back on that knowledge, it wasn't because he was the bad guy. He was some mean old man sitting on a mountain somewhere, didn't want us to have anything. He knew what we were capable of.
Exactly.
Without a doubt. Just like you know what your children are capable of most of the time. You know your children well. You know them. They're part of you, And so you know them well. You know what they're capable of. Sometimes more than they know what they're capable of. Okay? That's the way
You
that
can't
goes.
tell them that.
Yeah.
Wow. It's so true, Dennis, and it's amazing because, again, it just highlights what we as humans are capable of, right? And the choices that we could make, and the choices we actually have made and are still capable and should be making right now. And really, I think where we're at right now, this is D-Day. This is time for us to make those choices. And I say, you just got to choose God. That's what I say. Whatever it is, choose God. Whatever the choice, choose truth. Just choose truth.
Well, we've got to realize that no matter how much power we get, we got,
right.
I think, God would understand that, hey, they're capable of what they're capable of doing. I don't think they could handle that. And that's probably why we're not tapping into the God particle right now. We couldn't probably handle him. We would have so much immense power to do the thing. We could do a lot of good with it, but look at the potential for evil with it too. That's what we got to look at. And I talked to a lot of people about this over the years. There is an inherent darkness in us all. That darkness is there. And if anybody says, "Oh no, I don't have any dark," they're lying. Okay, everybody's got a certain amount of that darkness. In law enforcement, we used to say, "Hey, everybody's walking around with a murderer inside of them. In the right circumstances, you could kill somebody if you had to." Okay. That darkness is in us all, and the darkness on the outside, I call it the darkness of this world or this universe, is always looking to hook up with that darkness in us, because
it's so
then
true.
it can pull us deeper into that darkness.
It's so true. Yeah. It's like also when you're looking at the guys who can hypnotize you, right? They can hypnotize you to do things that you really don't even know you're doing, but they can only do that if you have a propensity, if that part of you that is a murderer is larger than that part of you that's not a murderer. It's hidden there somewhere. That's what I believe. I truly believe they can tap into what is already there, but they cannot actually infect you with stuff that's not already there. It's like a magnet. They are predators. They will smell the blood they want, and they will go for the blood they want, and that's what they do. So when we are in our light, when we are vibrating on a high level, and we are happy, even though life can be crap, you've got to see that everything in life is a lesson. Choose to grow through the experience rather than dive into the doldrums and into your pit of despair. That's where they love to get you, is in your pit of despair. So choose to see the good in everything. And yes, truth is stranger than fiction, for sure. And then, that's how we move through these crazy times. I mean, it really is a time of discerning and faith right now, faith over fear like never before. I don't know, Dennis, do you have anything else there for us this evening? This afternoon for you?
Well, I think, we got to understand when it comes to vibrations, there's negative and positive vibration. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to stand on the positive vibrational kind of thing more so than the negative. We have a much better outcome with that. The Nazis couldn't understand that. Okay. That was one thing that eluded them, because their minds and their souls were so dark on that. And let me put it this way. Okay. And I've always said this in relation to our souls and our beings. If we turn the lights out, we're going to be nothing but dark. Okay. And we don't want to do that. We want lights to stay on inside of us. Okay. We want the light to overwhelm the darkness. We want the light to be more than the darkness that's in us. Absolutely. And that's the balance that we want to hit. We want that balance, because when you have that kind of high vibrational thing going on for the positive, you have a much better life that way. You see things better. I have a lot of people come to me over the years. And why, I have a terrible life. I think I got a curse on me. That one thing happens after another. By the way, I can't get my drugs when I want them and all that stuff. I said, well, wait a minute. Maybe that's your problem. Maybe the kind of life that you're living has opened you up to all this negative stuff. It stands to reason. That's the way this goes. And that's the way it went with the Nazis and the Vrill society. Okay. They opened themselves up to the darkness when they should not have done that. Like I said, they were hooking up to the wrong thing here, the wrong way. And that's why I think
they're the left side of the swastika.
right now, the way where we're at this time, we don't need to hook up to the God particle. Okay. We would only probably do ourselves in a big way if we did. And I think our Creator knows that. And I've said this over the years, and it's without doubt the shows like this are very much like this. We're seeking the truth and trying to come out with the truth on these things. That's what our Creator wants. He doesn't want the truth hidden from us. He wants the truth out there, because that's what the good guys do. They put the truth out there The bad guys,
Exactly.
on the other hand, they don't want that done. They want to keep that truth hidden. They don't want you to know what's really going on here. They deal in shadows and darkness. And that's what all this dark shadow science is about. And this alchemy and all this other stuff. They're doing some underhanded stuff on the table that they don't want you to know,
Yeah.
because they're not up to anything good. We used to have a saying in the South, Shanty. There's two kinds of naked. You can be naked or you can be naked. Naked,
Naked. Yeah.
naked means you ain't got no clothes on. Naked means you ain't got no clothes on and you're up to something. So
Exactly.
that's the way it goes with evil. Okay.
Exactly. Oh, wow. Dennis, I've had a great time with you this evening, afternoon, morning for you all Americanos out there. Wow. It really has been good. And we're going to certainly be continuing this conversation in the future. It's really, really very interesting. And, for someone like myself that has not had any knowledge of this stuff in the past, I mean, I've known obviously in the spiritual realms and stuff like that, but not on the physical realm. I mean, it didn't even occur to me that human beings were even thinking that they could do things like this. But it's all fits together. It's amazing how now there's so many people, and bless you for your contribution and your service to humanity, honestly, because it's people like yourself and so many others out there who are bringing these truths to the fore, and in such a way that actually, it makes it easier for us to understand. It really does. So thank you, Dennis, and thank you for everyone who's doing their part. And our viewers, you guys are amazing. It's so cool. I was just saying to someone again the other day as well, over the past 4.5 years, just to see the channel. I mean, I've been struck, I don't know how many times, and how many of my videos been taken down and shadow, whatever, I don't care. The people who will see it are, they're the ones that are meant to see it, right? But it's just amazing to see how the community has grown, the different types of questions people ask, right? The different types of viewers that are coming. It's just it's amazing. So thank you, Dennis. I just want to say that as well to you.
Well, my pleasure. Like I said, we'll probably do part 2 because we just kind of scratched the surface today. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can carry on for a bit if you wanna, or do you think you wanna go on for it? Do you wanna rather do a part 2? Actually, I don't mind. I'm cool, Dennis.
Well, we'll save that for part 2. Yeah, it'll be more interesting. I think we go to part 2 on that.
You see, a little bit of mystery never hurt anyone, right? So we're gonna keep you mystified for a few more days until part 2 comes along. Okay, here we go. Dennis, before we even say anything, just catch Dennis on the road, Let's Travel on Monday night. Dennis, I've got your little tickers and things on, but before you bid us farewell, do you want to just tell everyone where we can reach you? Have you got anything going on, any shows, anything that you want to share with us?
Yeah, well, I do 3 shows a week. All of my shows are at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do Monday nights at 9:00. I do the road less travel and my good friend Gerald Fountain. We do a lot of the offbeat stuff. Then Wednesday nights at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do Hunting the Shadows. You never know where we're going to go on that. And then Friday nights, I also do something called Paranormal Point of View. And we do some movie reviews, book reviews, and stuff like that on that. So it's from a paranormal slant. And then I also have a website, DennisWCarroll.com, if you need to contact me or anything like that. I also have a paranormal consulting service. If you need to consult with me on any kind of paranormal problem, you can get in touch with me there at DennisWCarroll.com.
There you have it, guys. There you have it. So, but otherwise, we will see you. I will let you guys know when we're going to do a part 2. And I so appreciate this comment. Hang on. Sorry, wrong one. Jojo Waken, yes, I appreciate awesomeness as well. But I want to just say, hang on. There was a nice comment that came on now, which is Captain of my soul. I love it. Thank you so much. And And honestly, it succeeds, and we stay afloat. Little Team Africa, yeah. We feisty, and I promise you, I ain't going anywhere. So they can strike and strick and do whatever they like, as much as what they like. We had to stay, and I appreciate each and every one of you for joining this platform and this show and our amazing guest tonight. Dennis, maybe you want to end off for us in prayer, if you don't mind.
Okay, let's have a little word of prayer. Okay, let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you today for giving us shows like this, that we can get the truth out to the people listening. We ask that you will help give them discernment, that you will help them understand the things that are going to happen in this world, the things that have happened and will happen. We ask, oh Lord, that you will protect us in our going out and our coming in. We ask that you will give your holy angels charge over us to keep us in all our ways. We ask this in the one name to which all power is given in heaven and earth. In the name of Jesus Christ, we humbly pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Dennis. And everybody, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Unfortunately, I know Joanne was in the chat. Thank you, Dennis. Joanne was in the chat earlier. She's supposed to be on tomorrow. Unfortunately, keep her in your prayers, please, guys. She just had a close family member pass away, so we won't be seeing her this week. But we will be telling you all about our little baby kangaroos that we've adopted. I love it. Okay. Dennis, thank you so very much. God bless you. God bless everybody. Take good care. And I look forward to seeing you in just a few days again. Cheers, everybody. Mwah.